All right, let's begin. Good morning, everyone. We are holding on Daf Mem Amud Aleph 40a, and we're dealing with, does wood become holy with the Shemitah holiness, with the Peiros Shvius? Will wood become considered Peiros Shvius, holy with the holiness of Shemitah, which does create problems. Number one, with regard to the lulav, can you buy it on Shemitah? And it also creates issues with if wood becomes holy with the Kedusha Shvius, with the holiness of Shemitah, you would have other issues of buying it and selling wood on Shemitah, and the money might carry the Kedusha, it'll transfer, the money will become holy, and then the money you need to use for the right things. So these are laws that are applicable. They're applicable on the during the Shemitah year and right afterwards. And so we're dealing with wood. Does it become holy with the holiness of Shemitah? And the simple answer should be no, that wood is not, it doesn't have the concept of liachla. It's not used for eating, but it also says lachem. It also says lachem, which means that it's for your benefit. So things that are to benefit from, maybe it does, maybe it is included. And so the Gemara says that why is the lulav, why are we dealing with an issue of the lulav? And we needed to say that the lulav is a 6th year lulav. Why do we need to say that? Let's just say it's Ein Bahen Kedusha Shvius. And the Gemara brings a brisa that talks about leaves of reeds and leaves of vines, and what you did was you were gathering them and gathering them for the winter. Anyway, you gather. So it depends what you gathered them for. You gather them for the storage, to store them. And what did you gather them for? Did you gather them for the animals to eat, or did you gather them to cook with? If they were gathered for food for the animals, then they have kedusha shvius. If they're gathered for wood, then they don't have kedusha shvius. So it sounds like anything that's gathered for other purposes besides eating doesn't have kedusha shvius. That's what it sounds like from there. So the Gemara had to answer and said, no, that's not going to apply to. So you want to apply that to the lulav. And what would you say? Well, the lulav is gathered in order to the main usage of a lulav is to sweep with, is it's a broom, and it's not meant for eating. So let's assume that it doesn't have kedusha shvius. So that's a question on our discussion of our Gemara, because our Gemara wanted to explain the lulav. The exemption of the lulav is because it's a 6th year lulav. According to what we're just seeing now, even a 7th year lulav should not be holy with the holiness of Shemitah, because it's wood and it's not used for eating. It's not for animal food. It's not so seemingly the lulav should not be holy with the holiness of Shemitah. So the Gemara's answer is that it actually could be considered holy with the holiness of Shemitah. And why would that be? Because the broom, which is the lulav, it is something that the usage of it, the benefit of it, at the same time that you're benefiting from it, of sweeping with it, it also is consuming it. It gets consumed at that time, meaning it gets ruined, and the usage, the work with it causes it to be what you would call liachla, that it's consumed. And so biura, it's biur, it's destruction. The fact that it gets used up is at the same time that you're getting benefit from it. And therefore, it would actually be included in the same thing like food. Wood could be similar to food. What type of wood? Wood that's used as a broom. That type of wood is the same as food because that is an item that's lachem and liachla. Lachem means for your benefit, and liachla means for food. And how do we compare the two? We say that anything that's similar to food, food gets consumed, it gets ruined when you're benefiting from it. You're benefiting, you're enjoying it, and the food gets ruined. The same thing as a broom. You're benefiting from the broom, you're sweeping your floor, and the broom is getting ruined. So it's exactly like food, and it would basically be carry with it the laws of Shemitah and the holiness of Shemitah, and that would be reason why the lulav would be considered a Shemitah lulav if it was the right year of Shemitah. If it was emerged during the year of Shemitah, it would be a Shemitah lulav. Now, so the Gemara had said that what is excluded then from Shemitah holiness? So that what would be excluded is regular wood, not a lulav, not the lulav, but regular wood. That would be excluded because regular wood, the benefit of the consumption of the wood is right away. It gets consumed in the fire. And when it becomes a coal, that's when you use it to cook with. And so the benefit and the destruction of it is at two separate times. First, it's the destruction of that wood. It gets consumed by the fire. And then it becomes a coal. That's when you cook with it and you benefit from the food that's being cooked. So that type of wood would not have the holiness of Shemitah on it. But a lulav will have the holiness of Shemitah. And this was the Gemara's answer. The Gemara did ask, well, what about oily wood that's used as a torch? And the Gemara says, stam eitzim lahasaka, that most eitzim, most woods are not used for that. And we give like a blanket rule that this is what wood is for. Wood is for hasaka. And it doesn't really matter if you have in mind for something else. It's sort of like this is what wood is, and you can actually use it for other purposes, but this is what it's meant for, and it will automatically, regular wood will not be holy with the holiness of Shemitah. A lulav will be holy with the holiness of Shemitah. So then the Gemara said that is wood really meant for hasaka, for burning and cooking with? This concept that it doesn't have the holiness of Shemitah because it doesn't, the benefit of it and the destruction of it is at two separate times, that is really a machlokes Tanoim, the Gemara says. This is really the Rava made it like a blanket statement. And they don't have the holiness of Shemitah. The Gemara says this is really a machlokes Tanoim. Tanoi, the Gemara says. It's a machlokes Tanakama and Rabbi Yossi. Can you use Shemitah fruit for, and the example we gave was like wine. Jeffrey told us that it probably means vinegar. That's offered, that used to be used for detergent. So anyway, you're using this wine, the Shemitah wine. Can you use it to soak flax or to wash clothes? So Rabbi Yossi actually says you're allowed to. The Tanakama, the first opinion, says you can't use it. Now, the first opinion we understand. Why? Because at the time that you're ruining the wine or the vinegar, it is being mixed with the dirty clothing or the flax. That moment you're not benefiting from it. When do you benefit from it? Afterwards, when you're wearing the clothes, that's when you will benefit. So it's really two separate times. And therefore, because it's getting ruined first and then you're benefiting afterwards, it's not included in the lachem liachla. It's not like food. And therefore, according to the Tanakama, it would not be acceptable to use wine for such a purpose, because of the same idea that only things that Shemitah fruits take effect on the same things that you're allowed to use Shemitah money to buy. In other words, what becomes Shemitah fruit? Only things that get destroyed and benefited from at the same moment. That's what makes it holy of Shemitah, and that's what you can use. You could use Shemitah fruit for such purposes. And so that means that you wouldn't be allowed to use Shemitah fruit for this type of thing, which is something that it's not getting destroyed and benefited from at the same moment. So you can't use Shemitah fruit for Mishra or Kvusa, which is soaking in flax or washing clothing. Rabbi Yossi says you're allowed to. And basically, he would hold that it would be permissible to use wine for these purposes, because he doesn't have this rule about it has to be consumed and benefited from at the same moment. And according to Rabbi Yossi, it sounds like wood should be included in the holiness of Shemitah. So the Gemara says, what's the reason of the Tanakama? We said lachem liachla, that it has to be la'achla mishra v'la'kvusa, can't be for these other purposes. Rabbi Yossi, it says lachem, you could use it for all your purposes. And then the Gemara gets more deep into it. The Gemara says, what do you mean? The Tanakama also sees the other word in the Torah, and Rabbi Yossi also sees the word liachla in the Torah. So how do they really reconcile? So now the Gemara gets to the nitty gritty, and it says Tanakama says, yeah, you have both words, lachem and liachla, but it has to be, as we've said a few times, hana'ah and biur at the same moment. That the benefit and the destruction of it are at the same time, similar to food, and that excludes detergent. Using wine for your detergent or for your flax, that would not be acceptable, and that would mean that wood would not be holy with the holiness of Shemitah. Then comes Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Yossi's opinion is that you're allowed to use wine for detergent or vinegar, wine vinegar for detergent. And the reason that he says it is because it says liachla, and the fact that it says for food, he says does not exclude using it for detergent. Well, you know what it excludes for? It excludes using it for refuah. And now we're up to the brisa. It excludes refuah. Refuah means for healing, for like a Band-Aid, for a soothing type of cream. Melugma is some type of healing, soothing and healing purposes. So that would be something you can't use Shemitah produce for, Shemitah objects for. So, for example, wine, if that vinegar was beneficial as an antibacterial or something like that, I don't know if it is, but a vinegar could be used for such a thing. You want to pour it on your cut, you wouldn't be allowed to, because that would be melugma. That would be a healing thing, and that is not acceptable. It's only for food. But food doesn't exclude detergent, but it does exclude healing. Now we're up to the Kiddatanya, like it says in a brisa, and that is on the bottom of page 40a. So this is where we're going to start from, on page 40a, on the bottom, maybe 5 or 6 lines from the bottom of the page. And we're explaining the view of Rabbi Yossi. That's what we're in the middle of doing. We're going to be explaining, or we're trying to understand Rabbi Yossi's opinion that you're not allowed to use it for healing, but you are allowed to use it for soaking flax. You can use Shemitah produce, Shemitah fruit juice for soaking flax, and using for detergent, soaking your dirty clothes in it. So we're up to 6 lines up from the bottom, page 48. David, do you want to tell us what page it is in the Steinsaltz? Okay, I guess not. Avram, do you have Avram, are you able to see the page, Avram?
Yeah, I'm a bit out of it here. I got some dental
Oh,
issues, so
okay, okay.
Yeah, it's
Well, we're
194.
194 in your book.
Rabbi,
Oh,
Rabbi,
yes, Moshe.
when you're dealing with flax and detergents, and you're not supposed to be using it for healing, it's usher for that. Um, what I want to find out is, if you're washing something, your hands are going to get immersed, and you have a wound on your hands. How are you going to avoid getting your hands, preventing your hands from being in contact with it? If there's sores or there's wounds on it on your hands when you're soaking the clothing in the flax.
Yeah, it doesn't say that there's a prohibition. Let me mute you. Doesn't say that there's a prohibition if the juice touches a wound. It says you can't use it for that purpose. But if you're washing your clothes and it happens to be while you're washing the clothes, that's not your yeah. In other words, it's not like tuma where it makes it tummy. It's what are you allowed to use it for? So you're using it for your detergent. Happen to also touch something else. I mean, it's the same time. That's not a problem. It's you're using it for your detergent. Uh, just because you have it happens to make you feel good while you're benefiting. And it's like let's say you like holding fruits because it soothes you. The fruits have such a soft certain skin on them. Like a kiwi. Let's say you like kiwi, the kiwi skin, it's soothing, the skin of the kiwi. So what, you're not allowed to use it because it's soothing? You can't hold it? Uh, it just means that you can't use it in that, for that purpose and destroy it in that way. Okay, so getting back to the Gemara, so we're at the brisa that the Gemara is bringing, 40a on the bottom, 6 lines up from the bottom. Because the Tanya, like it was taught in a brisa, li'achla v'loy limalugma, that it's supposed to be for food purposes, shmita, and not for malugma, not for healing, not for some type of soothing ointment or healing or band-aid purposes and so on. You are saying, and here the brisa asks a question on itself. It's almost like it's talking to itself and saying, really, should I be saying this? You're saying that it's for food and not for melugma, for healing, or maybe ella maybe it should be excluding detergent for washing clothes. Maybe that's what we should exclude from the word li'achla. It's for eating. For eating purposes, maybe that should exclude the detergent. It shouldn't be excluding maybe it shouldn't be excluding the healing. So kishehu aimer lachem. So since the Torah says lachem, it's for you. So the Torah said these two words, lachem and liyachla, and that's really what we're dealing with, these two words, that it's for you, which sounds like all types of benefit. And then it says liyachla, it sounds like only for eating benefit. But on the other hand, it does say lachem, which means all benefit. On the other hand, it does say la'achla, eating benefit. So this is what we're dealing with. So he says, it says lachem, which is all types of benefit. Harei lechvusa amor. Behold, this is including kavu. This means to include kavusa, to speak about for detergent purposes, that it's okay because it says lachem. So hamani makayim. Well, what am I going to do with the word liachla for eating? I'll have to exclude something else, liachla v'leilam, that I'll say it says liachla for food purposes, and that will exclude melugma, the healing purposes, for using it for that type of thing. What makes you, what do you see? What are you drinking? What do you see that you're going to include for detergent purposes and you're going to exclude melugma purposes? Why take this and exclude that? Maybe exclude this and include that. What told you to choose? What's making you pick and choose this one versus that one? So what do you see that you're including detergent, washing purposes? And what do you see that you're excluding melugma, healing and soothing purposes? Maybe you should understand it the opposite. So the Gemara, now we turn the page 40b. Marba aniyas hakvusa, I am going to include the detergent, the washing purposes, that's going to be acceptable to use Shemitah fruit for. And the example we talked about is the wine or wine vinegar that is Shemitah. Sheshava b'chol adam, and the reason I would include that is because that's something that's equal to all people. Everyone needs such a thing, just like everyone needs to eat. Everyone needs clean clothing. But you need detergent. It's something that everyone needs. Umaitzi es hamalugma, I would exclude malugma, something for healing purposes. She'ena shava l'chol adam, it's not something that everyone needs. It's only for certain people. That's not equal to all. It's not everyone is sick. And so if we're going to include something and exclude something else, Rabbi Yossi says, I would include things that are applicable to all, and I would exclude things that are not applicable to all. And that's why I'm including these and I'm excluding those. The other opinion had explained that they are including all things that are similar to food, that are biuroi v'hanaasai shava, that the consumption of them and their benefit is all at the same time. That was the other opinion. So that seems to be the conclusion over here, that we have an argument about what carries with it the holiness of Shemitah. And according to this argument of Rabbi Yossi and the first opinion, the Tanakama, what comes out, it would seem that wood that's used for purposes of cooking, that would be something that's equal to all people. So that would mean that all wood would be included in the Shemitah rules, because in Shemitah holiness, because cooking is the main usage of wood, and that would be something that would be included for Shemitah. On the other hand, according to the other opinion, it's not biuroi v'hanaasai shava. It's not something that at the same time it gets consumed of and you benefit from, and therefore it would not be included in Shemitah fruit. So it seems that eitzim lahasaka, the wood that's used for burning in order for cooking purposes, that would be a machlokes, an argument, if it has the kedushas shvius, if it has the holiness of Shemitah. Now comes the Gemara and it brings a brisa. Man tana laha, who is the author of this? The Tanu Rabbanan, that the rabbis taught. Liachla v'layla melugma, that the Shemitah fruit is given for eating purposes and not for healing or soothing purposes. La'achla v'layla ziluf, it is given for eating purposes and not for spraying, for a good smell. Ziluf is some type of like spritzing, scatterings for like a good smell. That would not be included. Yayin, Rashi gives the example that it's wine, that they would be mazalafit, they would spray it for a reach toiv, for a good smell. So la'achla v'loy lazilaf, li'achla v'loy lasais mimena apiktavizin, that it's meant for eating and not in order to make from it. You can't make from the fruits of Shemitah some type of a like a medicine that causes one to vomit. And what would the reason be of all these things? Melugma is healing someone who's sick, for someone who's sick or needs some type of soothing. Achlav leilaziluf, for someone who's like very aristocratic and they need like a good smell that wherever they go, they very pampered. And li'achlav leilasis menapiktaviz, and that's also for someone who's sick and needs to, maybe they overate and they need to make themselves vomit. So they have a certain sickness that they need to, they're going to make some type of a medicine from this Peresh Shvius. So who does all this go like? So it sounds like it goes like the opinion that we just mentioned. This is These are all things that are not applicable to all people. Not everyone goes around spraying wine to have a good smell in your house, even if you're, even if you have a lot of wine. So it's kaman to Rabbi Yossi. This sounds like Rabbi Yossi's opinion that you can't use Shemitah fruit for these types of things. The Rabbanan, because if it would be the rabbis, Mishra Uchbusa, the rabbis would say that you also have another thing which should have been excluded, and that would be soaking flax and washing clothes. Now let's just look at Rashi over here. Keman ki Rabbi Yossi. Who does this go like Rabbi Yossi? This is on the 5th line in Rashi. That he excludes only things that are benefits that are not equal by all people. These are only applicable for a chayla, a sick person, and an istinus, a person who is very pampered, very refined, and not sure best word to translate istinus. Someone who gets disgusted if things aren't perfectly clean. Delicate person. Okay, yeah, maybe that's a good word. V'hainu tanoi de lo'el de l'rabbanan le'nogatius. This is the tanoim that we mentioned earlier, because the rabbis, according to the rabbis, the laws of Shemitah are only applicable for davar shanasu b'yirei shava, that things that are the hana, the benefit in their consumption is equal. The darshinan le'nami hachi, that they darshan the pasuk this way, v'yisa shabbat haaretz, that the rest of the land should be that it's only lachem, similar to liyachla, that it has to be food similar to food, that hanasiv v'yurei shaveh v'loy be'etzim, it wouldn't apply to wood. Rabbi Yossi darish hachi v'yisa shabbat zaretz neiheges hanasi shaveh b'chol adam, and Rabbi Yossi understands it this way, that it means something that's equal to all people. V'afilu eitzim lahasaka, he would even include wood for hasaka. So here Rashi spells it out clearly, the conclusion of the previous Gemara, that according to Rabbi Yossi, you would even include wood that's used for burning purposes. It's equal to that's equal for all people, and that would be Rabbi Yossi's opinion. So the Gemara basically clarifies another brisa that it fits with Rabbi Yossi. Okay. Now we're going to start the next piece. So what we've learned until here is that Shemitah fruits, there are certain laws about them. Number one, there's a law what becomes holy, what that grows during Shemitah, what stage of the growth has to happen during the Shemitah, and then what fruits and what is called a fruit of Shemitah that becomes holy, and in what items you can use, what purposes can you use Shemitah fruit for as well. And now the Gemara says, now how do you transfer Shemitah fruit onto other things? Meaning, if you have Shemitah fruit and let's say you sold Shemitah fruit. That would be an example. You sold Shemitah fruit to someone. So now you have money. Would that money transfer? Can you just say, you know what? I want to transfer that money onto these bananas. I have $5 worth of Shemitah fruit money. Can I transfer it onto these bananas? Or what about the opposite case? What happens if you have Shemitah bananas? Can you transfer the Shemitah bananas onto something else?
You redeem the Shemitah. That's what you're asking, whether you can redeem the Shemitah for $5.
Can you redeem the Shemitah for $5? You have Shemitah bananas. Would you be able to exchange it for a $5 bill?
To be used to purchase apples to eat.
Right. But what are you going to do with the bananas now?
I would think it loses its kedusha.
But will it lose its
The
kedusha?
same way you made it. I mean, what do you do when you have fruits that you have to bring to Yerushalayim? You can't schlep all that fruit, so you redeem it. You take the money to Yerushalayim and you buy fruit.
So the thing is that kedusha shvius is a little different, because the Shemitah produce will always stay. The way it works with Shemitah fruits is that
Oh, Shemitah, right, is not Meiser. I'm
not
sorry.
exactly
Okay.
the same. There's Meiser Sheni and Netaravoy that your example fits very well with, but Shemitah fruits are a little different because Shemitah fruits have a certain kedusha to them, and that kedusha doesn't really leave. The kedusha really stays on Shemitah fruits, and that's why if you buy wine in the store, you will once in a while get a bottle, maybe by mistake, and it'll say that this is Shemitah wine. They actually sell it here in America sometimes. I've gotten a gift, Shemitah wine, and it's a little complicated what you how to deal with such wine. But the law is that you would not be allowed to make Havdalah with such wine and pour the wine over the Havdalah candle. Why? Because you're wasting the wine, and it's not appropriate to waste it in that way, to make it undrinkable. By pouring it over a candle that the ashes are going to get into the wine, and the wick is going to get into the wine, and so on, and that wouldn't be acceptable. So that would be Shemitah wine. Now, the reason, so what am I saying? I'm saying that the wine stays holy even though you bought it in the store. So your money would be kadosh with the kedusha shvius. That money should have the holiness of Shemitah. And the wine would also stay holy with the holiness of Shemitah. Now that money will now be holy with the holiness of Shemitah. That money can you exchange for other things. So the Gemara says here, Amar Rebbe Elazar, Ein Shvius Mischalelas. Shemitah value, Shemitah holiness does not get mischalel, exchanged and become unholy, ella derech mekach, only in a way of purchase. It has to actually be purchased in order to exchange it. Could you do it yourself and just say, I'm exchanging this for that? No. It won't get exchanged. It has to be derech mekach. Rabbi Yochanan says, bein derech mekach, bein derech chilul, that you could exchange it either way by buying something and the money automatically carries, or you could just do your own shtick. I'm exchanging this for that. And you could make a switch. You could switch things over. You could switch it onto the holiness could be exchanged, whether in a way of purchase or whether in a way of chilul, where there's no other buyer and there's no seller. You're just exchanging one from the other. That's the term chilul over here. You're machalel. You make the other item chulin. You make the other item mundane. So the Gemara says, "My time of the Rebbe Elazar." Why does Rebbe Elazar say his halacha that you need to buy it, and only then will it actually get a dechsiv? Because it says v'shnas hayovel hazois. It says in this year of Yovel, v'samech lei, and it's right next to v'sis simkaru memkar. When you when you sell a item to sell to your friend, or you want to buy something, don't cheat each other. So right next to the laws of Yovel, which is similar to the laws of Shemitah, it says about buying and selling. So the Gemara, so Rabbi Elazar connects he says, you see the juxtaposition of the two laws, and you learn from it that the laws of Shemitah are connected to buying and selling, meaning in order to exchange something, b'derech mekach v'loy derech mekach v'loy derech chilul. That it has, this is the way to exchange it, is in a way of purchase, not in a way of exchanging on your own. You need to do it in a way of purchase. Rabbi Yochanan, and what is Rabbi Yochanan, my timer? What is his reason? And the Gemara says, "Dechsiv ki Yovel hi kodesh." Yovel is kodesh, and Yovel is holy. The Jubilee year, which is basically the same laws as a Shemitah year. So it says Yovel is holy. Ma kodesh bein derech mekach bein derech chilul. Just like holy things like hegdish, similar to what we were talking about with regard to Meiser Sheni and Neta Revoy, just like holy things, Bein Derech Mekach, Bein Derech Chilul, they could be exchanged with their Hegdish could be exchanged. You could be Mechalalit. So Af Shavias, also Shemitah, is Bein Derech Mekach, Bein Derech Chilul. You could exchange it. So what this means is that there is a method of exchanging that is acceptable for anything that's holy, and that includes Shemitah and Yovel produce, or Shemitah and Yovel money that could be exchanged. It could be exchanged. Now the Gemara, it could be exchanged according to this opinion. Again, this is Rabbi Yochanan's opinion. Rabbi Elazar argued. He said, no, you have to buy it or sell it. That's how it gets exchanged. The Gemara says, and the Gemara is going to go back and forth now. Rabbi Yochanan, hi, ki simkuru memkar my ovidle. So what does Rabbi Yochanan do with the fact that it's juxtaposed to the laws of buying and selling? He uses this to the teaching, to teach us the teaching of Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina. That's why it's next to the laws of buying and selling. And he says a very important teaching, the Tanya, that it's taught in a brisa, that Amar Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina. Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina says, Boy Re'eh, come and see Kama Kosha, how harsh is avaka, the dust, shel shvius v'chulu, the dust of Shemitah. Even something that's not exactly the main category of the prohibition of Shemitah, it's just the dust of it, which is like doing business with the fruit of Shemitah. But look at the severity of it. Adam noisev and noisein b'peiros shvius. If a person does real business with it, not like we talked about before, where you're selling one esrog, but if you're doing business with Shemitah fruit on a commercial level, and l'soif, what's going to happen in the end? Moicher es metaltalav v'es kelav. He's going to end up selling his possessions, his metaltalin, his movable possessions, and his utensils, because he's going to end up being poor, because he should never have done business with Peiros Shvius, which is what we're calling avoka, the dust of Shemitah. This is not like working the field. You're doing some business with that produce. So it's more of the outcome, the dust that falls from the Peiros Shvius, meaning the Shemitah fruit grew. It grew on its own, whatever. You didn't do the work. But you're just taking the outcome, the Shemitah fruit, and you're doing a business with it. That is going to cause a person to become poor, because right after the laws of Yovel, it mentions the laws of selling. And you're going to end up selling your possessions in order to live. It means it's going to cause you would think you made money. What do you mean? I'm making money on selling Yovel fruit. I'm selling it at a profit. No. Hashem says, no. You're going to sell it, you're going to lose. You're going to end up selling your own stuff. So L'soif meicheres metaltel of eskelov shenemer, as it says in the pasuk. In the end, you're going to sell your own possessions, as it says, b'shnas hayovel azois. In the year of this yovel, tashuvu ish alachuzasei. Person returns to his field, to his inheritance, and or his field of his lineage. In other words, his achuzah, I guess inheritance would be the right word. The samech lei, and right next to it, it says v'chisimkuru mimkar lamisecha. If you're going to sell a memkar, possessions to your friend, that you're going to end up selling such things because you should never have done business with Shemitah fruit. And what does this mean? It means that you're going to end up selling your possessions. In other words, the pasuk doesn't say you're selling your possessions, but we're connecting the fact that it's written right next to it to be sort of like a punishment for doing business with the Shemitah fruits. Rabbi Elazar, and Rabbi Elazar, Haikrad Rabbi Yochanan, my avidlay. This pasuk of Rabbi Yochanan, that he understands that it's kodesh, that kodesh tiyalachem. He understands that the fruits of Shemitah are kodesh, which allowed Rabbi Yochanan to say that you could exchange it in a way of chilul, that you exchange one for the other, and that is acceptable. You don't just have to sell it. What does he do with that pasuk? What does he do with that? It sounds like it's holy. It sounds like other similar to other holy things that you could exchange. He uses it for what was taught in a brisa, that yovel is yovel he kodesh, that it is yovel in its holy. Ma kodesh teifes is dabav, just like holy things. The hegdish, the name of holiness, affects the money. Af shviyas teifeses es dameha. Also, Shemitah, the money becomes it grabs on to the Shemitah grabs on to its value, and so when you exchange things, it catches on, the money catches on to that holiness. So the Gemara says, Tanya Kavasei de Rabbi Elazar, Tanya Kavasei de Rabbi Yochanan. We have two brises. One is going to follow Rabbi Elazar, that you can't exchange it yourself. You have to sort of buy and sell. And we have a brisa that fits with Rabbi Yochanan, that you can exchange it yourself also, and you can buy and sell. In either way, it'll get exchanged. Tanya Kavasei de Rabbi Elazar. We have a brisa like that goes according to Rabbi Elazar. Shvias teifeses es dameha. Shemitah grabs on to the money that was used to buy the Shemitah produce. And as it says, ki yovel hi kodesh tiyalachem, that it's yovel, it's holy, it will be holy for you. Ma kodesh teifeses damav, just like kodesh, holy items that are called hegdish for the Beis Hamikdash. Just like when you redeem them, teifeses damav, the money is grabbed onto the holiness and it becomes holy. The usur, and it's prohibited to use them for that money for unholy things. That money becomes holy. Af shviyas, also shviyas is teifeses es dameha. It grabs on to the money. The asura, and it's prohibited to use them for things that are not appropriate for peiros shviyas, for fruits of shviyas. So the Gemara now asks, I kodesh teifes dama, I ma kodesh teifes dama. If you're going to say maybe just like holy, ma kodesh, just like holy things are teifes damav, that it grabs on to the that it grabs on to the money. That the usur, 1 second, v'yotzei l'chulin, and the item itself, the yoytze l'chulin, and the item, the original item that was made holy, becomes mundane. Shvius, maybe you'll say af shvius teifeses estameha v'yoytzes l'chulin. Maybe you'll say that shmita also is teifes. It grabs on to the new item, which is the money, and the original item will, the original shmita fruit maybe should become mundane and unholy. Talmud loymar tihiyah. So we learn from the pasuk tihiyah. The Torah tells us Talmud loymar. It's the Torah says that tihiyah it shall be. What does the pasuk say? Kodesh tihiyah lachem. It will be holy. It'll stay holy. The Gemara understands that to mean Bahav Yasa Tehei, that Shemitah is even more strict than Kodesh. That Shemitah, the original item, stays holy. The other item will become holy. So when do you really have an exchange that one thing doesn't become holy? When you exchange the money. If you exchange the original item, both stay holy. If you exchange the money, that's where it'll actually exchange. One will stay holy, one won't. Only the last item gets the holiness. That's what ends up happening. Now, so it says, "Have yasate." So how does this work? Lokach bepeiros shvius. If you bought with shmita fruits, basar meat, elu v'elu misbarin b'shvius. Both of them have the obligation of biur, of being getting rid of at the end of the time that the Shemitah fruits are, once the Shemitah fruits are no longer out in the fields, you have to get rid of both of these items. And which basically means that they both have the holiness of Shemitah on them, the meat and the fruits. The fruits stay holy and the meat becomes holy, and it becomes the same holiness. Now, what happens if lakach the basar dagim? What happens if you bought with the meat? You now exchange it, you bartered it for fish. Yotza basar v'nichnesu dagim. The meat is going to be mundane. It loses the holiness, and the fish now takes on the holiness. Lakach dagim yayin. Then you bought wine with the fish. Yatsu dagim. The fish loses its holiness. It goes out of the holiness of Shemitah. V'nichnas yayin, and the wine becomes holy. Lakach b'yayin shemen. You sold the wine. You bought oil. Yatsa yayin v'nichnas shemen. The wine loses its holiness, and the oil enters into the holiness of Shemitah. Ha ketzad. So, what is the general rule? How does this work? Acharoin nichnas b'shvius. The last of the last, the last one enters into Shemitah. The final one, upri atzmai, in the fruit itself, the original fruit, usher, it stays prohibited. Now, what are we saying from here? We're trying to bring a proof to Rebbe Elazar. Now, we knew all these laws. Shemitah fruit, the original stays holy. The one you exchange it for, it could switch. The money, the food, this, it keeps switching. You switch this for that, you switch that for the other thing. Ultimately, it gets changed. But we're trying to prove that Rebbe Elazar's law, that only when you buy it and not when you exchange it. So what do we see in this brisa? So the brisa said, what were the examples the brisa gave? Lakach, you bought with the Perish Vias meat. Then lakach dagim, lakach yayin, lakach shemen. Each one is you bought something with it. It didn't give the example of chilel. In other words, You can't just go into your cupboard and pick one thing. Oh, you know what? This was Shemitah fruit. Now, okay, I'm exchanging it for this. Rabbi Elazar says you can't do that. Now, if you could do that, the Brisa should have given that example. Chilo, you have fish, you have meat, you have wine, you have oil. You switch it yourself. It says lakach. You're constantly buying. Why does it keep giving these examples? Midiktani, lakach, since it constantly is using this term, lakach, alma derech mekach in derech chilol. So we see that there's a brisa that follows this opinion of Rabbi Elazar that it only works in a way of mekach and not it doesn't work in a way of chilel. Tanya Kavasei Rabbi Yochanan, we have a brisa that follows Reb Yochanan. Echad Shvias, v'echad Meiser Sheni, whether Shemitah, whether Meiser Sheni, Meschalel, al Behema Chaya v'oif, Bein Chayin, Bein Shchutin, it can be Meschalel, you can just switch it over, uses the word Chilel, that you exchange it. And you could exchange it even, according to Reb Meir, even onto live animals, not only a shechted animal. You don't have to just exchange it for meat. You could exchange it for a live animal. These are the words of Reb Meir. The rabbis say, al shchutin meschalolin, al chayin ein meschalolin. You can shecht it on shchut. You can exchange it for shchutin. Now, what do we see already? It keeps saying the word exchange. So this shows that there is a brisa that follows Rabbi Yochanan that you could exchange Shemitah fruits. He uses the word chilel. The previous brisa used the word lakach, buying, all buying and selling. Here, the brisa used the word chilel, you exchange.
He uses the word deconsecrate. Like you consecrate, you deconsecrate. The opposite of consecrate.
That is more correct than the word I'm using. Because chilel is the literally is to make it chulin, to make it so that is more literal. But the point is that you're able to exchange it yourself, and you don't have to buy it and buy and sell. But you're right. It means you can deconsecrate by exchanging it. By doing what? By exchanging it, you can be meschalel. So it sort of like took on a new translation in the according to the halachas of Meiser Sheni, and that when you use this word meschalelin, it doesn't just mean, oh, you deconsecrated it. It means you consecrated a new thing. You exchanged it, because really we have to emphasize that the other thing does get holy, and this thing is deconsecrated. But that's the term, is meschalelin. Right, okay. So al chayin, it says al shchutin meschalelin, you can exchange it for shchutin, but al chayin ain't meschalelin. You can, for live things, you can't. For live animals, you can't exchange it. Why? You know, we're afraid. If you exchange Shemitah fruit for live animals, that those live animals are going to have children. And you're going to have many of them that it's going to be a huge operation of Shemitah, of things that are Shemitah holiness. And you're going to end up sinning with them and keeping them after the time that they're supposed to be gotten rid of. And there's a Zman Bir, there's an end time for Shemitah fruits, and there's an end time for Meiser as well. And so ultimately, you're exchanging it for these things. You're going to end up creating a big problem, because they're just going to multiply, and you're going to add to the obligations, which you might not be able to handle. And therefore, according to the Chachamim, according to the rabbis, you can't exchange it for live animals, only for animals that are shechted. Okay, so this really concludes the page, and it concludes to at least these two opinions, explaining them and giving brises, showing brises that appear to be according to each of these opinions. The next Gemara The Gemara says, Amar Rava. So we turn the page 40, the next page, 41. Oh, no, Amar Rava Machlokes. 3 words on the previous page. Amar Rava Machlokes v'Zacharim. So Rava says that the argument between Reb Meir and the Chachamim, if you can exchange for animals, is really only if it's male animals. Reb Meir says you're allowed to exchange for male animals because male animals don't get pregnant. Aval ben akevos, but if it's female animals, but if female animals, everyone agrees you can't exchange for a female animal. Why? Because by a male animal, the mayor could get away with it and say, well, listen, male animals are not getting pregnant, so I don't have to worry. And the female animal, I agree with you, the rabbis, that you have to worry. The rabbi said, no, even male animals, we're afraid if we allow you, if it's going to be allowed to have male animals, people will make a mistake and they'll buy also female animals. Main issue is the female animals. That's really the issue. The question is, do we extend it to the male animals? And so the Gemara says that this would be, this is an important qualification to this, that even Reb Meir agrees. Now, on the Kevais Divrei Hakol, everyone says, even Reb Meir, al shchutin meschalin, you can exchange for shchutin for slaughtered animals, al chayin, but on live female animals, ein meschalin, you can't exchange. Gzeira shema yigadlam hanadorim. We're afraid that you will end up growing
Flocks.
Breeding animals.
You will breed. You will be megadol flocks from this one animal that you exchange on. You're going to get flocks and flocks, and you're going to end up sinning ultimately with keeping them too long after the zman of beer. Okay, well that concludes this little piece. We're going to stop here.
It says here one sentence. It says from the fact that the Brisa uses the term mischalon, deconsecrated, and not the term. So is it says the sages extended the decree to include males as well. From the fact that the Brisa uses the word mischalon, deconsecrated, and not the term purchased, apparently the sanctity of Shemitah produce takes effect by means of redemption as well.
Yeah, we said that already.
Oh,
okay, very good. Shkoyach.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Shkoyach,
Okay, have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.